So did you see the news? The news I'm talking about is that Hasbro has licensed the Power Rangers to Playmates Toys. Let's talk about it. Hey guys, I am Pixel Dan, and this is one of those toy news items that just really feels like it's kind of a big deal. And maybe I'm just thinking too much into it, but that's a bit of a shakeup. If you don't remember, Hasbro outright purchased the Power Rangers brand from Saban just a few short years ago, it feels like. So Hasbro owns the Power Rangers. And of course, when they took over, that's when they started doing their own toys as well, with things like the Lightning Collection. And now here we are with Hasbro making the announcement that they are actually giving the toy license to another toy company. It's pretty wild stuff. And you know, I'm not a huge Power Rangers collector myself, so I thought maybe I would call one of my friends who is a big Power Rangers fan just to see what he thinks of this. So give me just a second. Hang on.
I am Lord Zed, Emperor of all that I see. Send down the putties! Ha ha ha! Oh, cello.
Oh, hey, Andre, it's Dan.
Oh, hey, Dan.
Hey, did you hear the news? It's kind of some huge news. It turns out Hasbro has given the Power Rangers toy license to Playmates Toys.
Well, that makes sense. The Power Rangers have worked with other toy companies before. And what? Playmates? As in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from Playmates and Playmates? Oh, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, I know, it's pretty wild, and yeah, I suppose so. It's really interesting to think about what might be going on with this whole thing and what that could possibly mean.
What do you think this means, Dan? Do you think this means that the Power Rangers and the Ninja Turtles could cross over through Playmates toys? I mean, they did it with Hasbro with the comic Turtle Power Ranger ones, but I'm talking about new ones. Like they could do the Power Rangers as dinosaurs like they did in the comics, or they could do the Ninja Turtles as humans, or they could just do their own Ninja Turtles Power Ranger crossover. They could have 80s Turtles with 90s Power Rangers.
Well, yeah, sure. I suppose that's something they could do.
They could do a 1990 Ninja Turtle movie / 1995 Power Rangers movie crossover toy collection. They could recreate a deluxe set of the Power Rangers in space with the next mutation Ninja Turtles, Venus the Milo, and all.
Andre seems a little overexcited right now, so let's just put that away. In fact, here, I think this is what we should do. Let's read the actual press release, and then we will speculate a little bit. Hasbro, a leading toy and game company, today announced a global licensing agreement with Playmates Toys. Playmates is debuting its first Power Rangers collection with a kid-targeted Mighty Morphin Power Rangers toy line in 2025. As part of the agreement, Playmates holds licensing rights to develop additional cross-category Power Rangers products, including action figures, blasters, plush, roleplay, vehicles, and accessories. The deal encompasses global distribution across all regions excluding Asia. So that's really interesting. It sounds like Hasbro has basically licensed out the toy stuff to Playmates Toys to basically start their very own Power Rangers line going forward. Now, it is worth noting that the press release also says Hasbro will retain all entertainment rights and will continue to drive global strategy and growth for the Power Rangers franchise by strategically working with licenses across multiple categories, including publishing, fashion and footwear, promotions, and more. Hasbro will also further activate the brand across their direct-to-consumer channel, Hasbro Pulse, and as part of its presence at major industry events like San Diego Comic-Con. So there's a lot to unpack here, and this isn't completely clear as to what all of this means, so I'm gonna basically speculate here. But it sounds to me like Hasbro has made the decision to offload the production of toys for the Power Rangers brand to Playmates Toys, another toy company. Since they outright own the Power Rangers, it sounds like they're treating this like a toy license that they are now licensing out instead of doing in-house. Now, it does say that they're still gonna continue like promotions through Hasbro Pulse and San Diego Comic-Con. So it really makes me wonder if that means that they're still gonna do collector type stuff or maybe exclusives of some sort. I don't actually know what that means. In fact, one of the things I first thought of is like, does that mean this is the end of the Lightning collection? Or will the Lightning collection kind of continue in a smaller capacity moving forward? It's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. But let's think about it from the Playmates Toys front of things, because it does very specifically say that the Playmates Toys line is going to be kid-oriented, and they also specified that it was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Now, again, I'm not fully in the collecting group for Power Rangers. I always kind of cherry pick stuff here and there. But it's my understanding that one of the biggest downfalls with the Lightning collection is that they put far too much focus on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and not enough focus on completing teams across the board, across the spectrum. There's been so many other versions of Power Rangers, and Mighty Morphin seemed to be the main focus from Hasbro. And now it looks like Playmates Toys is also going to focus on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, which I get it. I suppose that's the most iconic of the brands. That's the one that I know the most. But it really feels like they're kind of leaving out a bigger Power Rangers audience. But again, let's bring this back. Playmates Toys does their best work when they're making toy lines for kids. They've been massively successful with multiple iterations of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and all of their best stuff has been kid-based. More recently, they've been doing the Godzilla and Kong stuff, which again, very kid-oriented. They did stuff like Ben 10. They're doing stuff like Miraculous Ladybug. So that's kind of Playmates' jam. That's the space that they live in. So when you're thinking about Power Rangers as kids' toys, I think Playmates will do a really good job with that. As far as like making cool toys that kids will enjoy, I think they've got that probably handled pretty well. I think the thing that's going to be a problem is if Hasbro's not doing collector toys anymore, Playmates Toys does not have a great track record for doing collector figures. Just thinking about any of their attempts at some of the more collector-oriented Ninja Turtles, that sort of thing obviously pales in comparison when we're comparing it to things like NECA and Super 7 and what they're doing. But that's because those companies are built to be collector toy companies, where Playmates has definitely operated in that kid space at retail with price points in the $8 to $10 range. So I think that's probably where they're going to stick things with their Power Rangers line. So I'm not sure what this means for collectors, adult fans of Power Rangers. I have no idea what this means for that. The other thing I was really thinking about here is the Zords. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I have the impression that that's one of the places that Hasbro didn't do a good job with. And I always thought that was interesting because when Hasbro first announced that they got the Power Rangers license, my initial thought was, oh good, the company that does Transformers is going to make some awesome Zords. And I don't think that really ever happened. And maybe that's because a lot of the Transformers are actually involved with Takara. I don't know. But I started thinking about with Playmates Toys and how they might handle Zords, and it just dawned on me that they made a killer Voltron. They made a couple killer Voltrons, like good Voltron toys. Most recently, I just looked at that 40th anniversary Voltron that's like hitting stores right now. Something like that in the vein of Megazord would be awesome. But again, awesome kids toy. Also, the other thing we have to consider with Playmates Toys is crossover potential. And Andre, in his excitement, brought that up a little bit, but it crossed my mind immediately too. We've seen them cross Turtles with everything. And while Hasbro has already done their version of a Ninja Turtles Power Rangers crossover, I would not be shocked if Playmates has something in mind for Turtles and Power Rangers combining. Could Godzilla fight a Megazord? That could be pretty fun. I have no idea what the licensing would be like for something like that, but with Turtles, I could totally see something like that happening. I think this is really interesting as far as like the ramifications or just the effects that this has on the toy industry in general, because it's not very often where you see one of the major toy companies with an IP that they own freely giving that to other toy companies to operate. In recent memory, the one that I recall the most is when Mattel decided to stop doing Masters of the Universe toys and they licensed it to Super 7 for a couple years, only for them to ultimately take it back and start the Masters of the Universe Origins line. So it has happened before. We've seen this sort of thing happen, but it is still rare. And it does make me wonder if this is the start of more of this sort of thing from Hasbro. Hasbro sort of did this thing where they kind of wanted to become like this entertainment house as well as like making the toys. They wanted to do all the other stuff. And they bought up a lot of IPs and picked up a lot of licenses. And now it almost seems like they're at a point where they're like pulling back. So maybe Power Rangers is just the start. Are we going to see them offer up some of these other IPs that they're sitting on to other toy companies to take a crack at it? Honestly, it's kind of exciting to think about, but also it's really interesting to see how this might affect the rest of the toy industry. It really does seem like things are changing quite a bit with the way the toy industry is working. We've seen a lot of toy companies doing collabs and announcing partnerships lately. I mean, even Mattel and Hasbro announced a partnership last year on certain releases. So it's kind of like a new world when it comes to how these toy companies operate. And this is really intriguing news to me, which is why I wanted to talk about it with all of you. So, let me know your thoughts. Am I just way overthinking this? Do you think that Hasbro's still going to continue their offerings and Playmates is just going to do something on top of it? Maybe how Spin Master does a kids DC line and McFarlane does a collector DC line. Maybe that's kind of what's going to happen here. Hasbro will maintain a collector thing with Rangers. I have no idea. I think it's going to be something that we will find out as it happens. 2025 is when Playmates Toys is going to be launching their Power Rangers line, and I'm very curious to see what San Diego Comic-Con brings this year in the way of announcements from Hasbro on if they're going to continue doing any toys for the Power Rangers brand. I'm especially interested to hear what you Power Rangers fans think of this news. Is this something that you're cautiously optimistic about? Are you nervous? Are you scared? Are you happy? I would be... I'm thinking about it in terms of like, what if this was happening with my favorite property? I already mentioned it did happen with Masters of the Universe a few years ago, but at the time, it was exciting because that meant we were still getting toys. And it didn't really change the flow of things. But this seems like a pretty big shift for Power Rangers. So I'm really curious to hear what you guys think. Sound off in the comments. Let me know down below. This is definitely going to be a fun thing to speculate on, I think. Thank you all so very much for watching, and shout out to my good friend Andre over at Black Nerd Comedy. Obviously, he is a massive Power Rangers fan. If you're not already following Andre, go do that right now. I think I left him on the phone. I'm sure he'll be fine. Until next time, my friends.
Dan, this is gonna be amazing. Dan, hello, Dan, Pixel Dan, hello, hello. Everyone always hangs up on me. I don't understand why. Make my monster grow.